Mavis, Neville and George. One day on the island of Sodor, Mike was ready to take George away because George had been very cheeky to the engines. "You useless puffballs are nothing but stinky winkies. I am fast, and you stinky engines are not part of the railway with rails on," he said. "Oh yes, we are," said Spencer and Edward, when at last Mike was ready to take George home and chuffed away. He's got rid of you," said Edward, "for good ribbons." And George was gone. George was taken onto the road and chuffed on, and Mike puffed away. And Mavis had to do work with Neville, the new engine. She decided she liked working with Neville, and there was Neville. "Hello again," said Neville. "Why? What's wrong with you, Neville?" asked Mavis. She said. "Well," said Neville, who's that steamroller? He's smelly." "His name is George," said Mavis. There was George. "Who called me smelly?" said George. "Neville," she said. No, said Neville. We want to tell lies. He said. "Too late," said George. "I'll show you what I'm made of." And George roared away. "Oh," said Mavis, "I'll show him," as she chuffed away. She shunted some goods train to let George crash into it, so that George won't be a really useful steamroller at all. At last, however, Mavis pushed the goods train up the hill, and she, at last, however, got ready. What Mavis didn't know was that there at the mountain was a crack on the track, and the track wasn't finished yet. Mavis didn't notice. She was too busy out of control. She was too busy out of control, and she was. After Mavis pushed and huffed the goods train up, one truck was too heavy as it thundered into the ravine, and it was never to be seen again. More trucks fell off and banged boulder off the mountain. The last truck came off the rails, and one coach fell off too. Mavis knew what happened. She can't stop George now, as one coach fell off too. "I can't stop," said Mavis, and thundered off the rails. And this made her very cross. Neville saw what happened. "I'll teach him a lesson too," he said, and chuffed away. Meanwhile, Oliver was taking some trucks to the yards, and suddenly George was blocking his way. George was blocking his way, and felt scared of Oliver trying to run him over. And then he was still blocking his way, and the green stone truck was stuck on the main line. "Let me through," grumbled Oliver. "I'm far too busy," said George. "You'll just have to wait." "There's no time to wait," said Oliver. "I must clear my trucks in line to let Neville through." "Pah," said George. "Then he'll have to wait too." "Gah," grumbled George. "Then he'll have to wait too." Just then, Neville's driver complained to the signalmaster, but the signalman already changed the point until Neville was going too fast. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," grumbled Neville. "Hurry, hurry, hurry." Hurry, hurry, hurry. Hurry, 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 said Neville in a cheerful way. Suddenly he saw a truck stuck on the main line. Get out of my way! But the truck wouldn't move. Until Neville forced it by accident. The next day, later, Neville arrived at the docks and was worried that the Fat Controller might be cross with him, but he was with his driver. However, who's caused this disturbance will be sent to the scrapyard, he said. I know who did this, said Neville. Do you, said the Fat Controller? It begins with a G. George, said the Fat Controller. You carry on putting your friend Mavis back on the rails, and I'll have a word with George. Thank you, sir, he said, and Neville puffed away, and the Fat Controller walked away to have a word with George. He knows where George is. He knew what George had done. He found George and decided to speak with him and have a word with him indeed.